when we work in a short form of anything. Today, there is a glut of fiction, there's a glut of comedy, there's a glut of documentary. And when we talk about the short version, there are just too many to watch. If you just go on YouTube and you look, it's overwhelming, and it's very hard for us to go, well, this is very, very valuable. Now, with that in mind, I want to go back a little bit into, well, if it's not about money, what is documentary short? Why does it matter? Why would I even encourage all of you to make documentary shorts? What would you get out of that? So let's go on to the next slide, slide 2 then. Okay, so first, I just want to make sure you know what I'm talking about, because we have some things that are in place from years and years of documentary. When somebody's nominated for an Academy Award, they are making a film that can't be longer than 39 minutes. So what that means is, for most years in the last several decades, most of the films in that category have been 39 minutes long. Someone starts a documentary, maybe intending it to be a TV hour, 52 minutes, and they cut it down, and those are the films that got nominated. A few years ago, the middle slide here, Two Hands, was a film by Nathaniel Kahn, and it was only 18 minutes, and people were a little shocked. This was different than the category. And last year, a film that's only 7 minutes was nominated, A Night at the Garden, is just 7 minutes long and was received very well. So there's a little bit of change, in part because now we're used to seeing short documentaries on Vine and not on Netflix yet, not much on Hulu, but we do on YouTube see them all the time, and we accept them. So let's go to the next slide. Well, how did I at all become aware of this as a field? I was a lover of regular full-length documentaries. I grew up in Southern California, went to the record store, went so often that the clerks got tired of me asking about music, and they said, well, if you love that music, go and watch the documentary about it. And this was a time it was harder to find music, didn't have YouTube and those things. So I went and watched a movie from 1970 called Woodstock. It's a very long documentary about the music festival. And let's go to the next slide. And when I watched it, it sort of changed my life, because I did see the musicians I liked. I liked Jimi Hendrix, among others, and yes, he's in the film. But for me, the shock was, there's a part of the film where they spend time with the man who sets up and cleans the portable toilets. And they start out where they're almost making fun of him. They just take the camera over and talk to him. And then it turns out he's actually really interesting. He's got one son who's at the Woodstock Fest, and one son who's in the Vietnam War. This is 1970. And he has several things to say that are really fascinating. And so I was just 18 years old or so, or even younger when I saw it. But I realized, of course I like Jimi Hendrix, but I also love the Portishead man. The man who cleans the toilets was fascinating. So let's go to the next slide. And this started me thinking about documentary, and I said, well, like many 17-year-olds might say, I want to do that. And I started looking into it and found out, at the time I was growing up, you guys are in a better place. When I was growing up, it was very hard to make a documentary. On the right are the Maysles brothers, who made many documentaries in the 60s and 70s, and who used 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter film cameras, and then a sound kit. And it's, when I was growing up, something, if you were in film school, you'd have access to, and I did not. I was at a school that had an art department, but no cameras really. So what was around after this was, people said, well, we'll make video. And today, that's exactly what we do. But at the time, people had home video cameras that were not very good. And even attempts to make professional things, like on the left, that's a Sony Portapak, those were really clumsy. And even though it wasn't something you'd use most times, when I got my first internship, I was given a Sony Portapak to go cover basketball. So I took this 40-pound recorder and this probably 25-pound camera on my shoulder, and I would run up and down the basketball court, and it was ridiculous. And the look of it was not very good. So I sort of had my hopes dashed right away. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what could I do? I really was sort of crushed in not being able to take this thing I discovered I love, but I went into photography, because then I could take all those ideas of documentary and I could make still images. So since that time, since I was 20 years old and after, I've always made documentary photographs for years and years. So let's go to the next slide. And you get a sense of some of the types of things I covered. So many protests, these are protests in LA, but also many other events. I shot a lot in New York. Let's go on to the next slide. But what was happening when this was going on is you guys are mostly, I think, young, and digital has always been part of your life. But in my case, when I started out, people did use especially film cameras, and digital was new. Well, I got involved right away with how you would make digital photos and then how you would use digital computers to install and to control what was being recorded. So I made a whole series of art pieces that used cameras to gather material. So the top left of this slide is a project we did where we shot 20,000 portraits in Los Angeles. And then those were brought in and used as video and used as a computer interface where you could search everyone's answers and things about them. And it was a very active piece that was based in photography, but was now digital. Let's go to the next slide. And what I had thought, well, wouldn't it be great to make a film like Woodstock? This was, at this point, out of my mind. Instead, I thought about art galleries. So I made many installations where you would walk in the gallery and you would interact with computers, or you would have something visual in connection with video or photographs. And these were usually made from a big collection of images, sometimes 10,000, sometimes 20,000, sometimes smaller. The one at the bottom left are people's photographs of loved ones who died. So this was at a religious school, and we started to play with the idea, well, people have that experience of images of someone who just died, and that's what they keep. And we made installations about that. So the idea was, if you could digitize an image, you could do more with it. So let's go to the next image. Okay, at the same time, even though my dream was, I felt, crushed, other people were saying, well, wait a minute, now we can shoot digital video and we can make that work. And this is a video called Untitled 001 Darkness by a Santa Monica filmmaker named Mike Gadecki, who played chain camera. He recorded 5 minutes, he gave the camera to the next person, they recorded things, and it went around for about 20 or 24 people, and they ended up with a video that made it to Sundance and some other big film festivals. And it was a series of 1-minute films. And it was different than something you would have done with a film camera. It was new and experimental, and they used Adobe After Effects for much of it. And I was excited to see that. So on the next slide, I then led a group of people to do something very much like it. We did a project called the Scan Project. The link, I'll send you guys the link for this video. And it is, I think we had about 18 or so artists who were ranging from young students to established filmmakers, and we all had them make 1-minute films on the topic of the scanner. And so this was, in the year 2000 and 2001, a sort of new direction. You couldn't have done this with film in the same way. And I was very excited by that, but it was very odd to work in a film that's just 60 seconds long. What could you do with that? So go to the next film, next slide. So the metaphor I like to use on this is I grew up imagining I would fly a jetpack. When I was a kid, you saw in science fiction movies, people with a jetpack, and they would put their jetpack on and fly to work, and it was amazing. But what we really got over the years was not that jetpack. Instead, we have tourists on a water jetpack, and we have things that are much more like a toy or too dangerous to use. And I sort of felt that at the time I started making films, we were in that mode of cameras being a little like toys or consumer cameras, and it was very hard to make a film, but we could do it. And again, I was a little discouraged. I was experimenting a lot and doing it like art, but I was thinking I will never make a full documentary. We just don't have the tools. And then I went to shoot a film, and I tried for months, and I came back with a lot of material, and I got more and more frustrated. And I said,